Funny, where were you 10 minutes ago? The 10 of us believed we were done for, forced to our knees by a bunch of police officers, all of which were keen on executing us on the spot. If it had not been for Quinn's insistent blabbering, we would probably be bloody stains on the concrete. He managed to keep them talking long enough for our savior to arrive in the form of Spencer. Well, Spencer and a cat.
Oh my god, it's so cute.
Space exclaimed as she knelt down, petting the cat.
He knows he is. That's Deku,
Spencer said with a grin. Maddie shot him a smirk as she walked past Quinn and Ryan.
Really, Spencer? Of all names, you chose that.
What's wrong with that?
Ryan asked.
It's the name of the protagonist in the first anime we ever watched together. Our first date.
He chuckled, smiling sheepishly.
Actually, I named it after the great Deku tree in Ocarina of Time.
She sighed, but her smile didn't fade.
Ah, of course. I shouldn't have expected any different from you.
Maddie and Spencer embraced, the two hugging as Deku stepped past them and approached the RV. The 11 of us all faced our smoking vehicle, staring at it in sadness.
Well, shall we give it a burial at sea?
Ryan suggested. I shook my head. No, we're not just gonna smash a bottle on it and leave it for dead. Let's fix this thing and keep on going.
Smashing a bottle is for ship launching, not burials,
Quinn corrected.
And with this amount of damage, I'm unsure if this thing is capable of running.
I looked at Andrew, and he shrugged.
Luis was a mechanic, not me.
I have some experience.
Ryan said.
The Sakara usually had me fixing cars, so I know my way around an engine.
That's good. Andrew, Ryan, Kaylee, and I will get the RV running. Octavia and Spencer, you two loot the bodies and take anything they have that may be useful. Quinn and Maddie, bandage up Space and the kids. I told them all.
Looting bodies?
Octavia asked, nervously.
I don't think I can.
Spencer grabbed her arm lightly.
Don't worry, you'll get used to it. Come on, while we loot, I'll tell you about this game I've been playing, Knights of Dragonia.
The two walked off towards the cop cars, while Andrew, Ryan, Kaylee, and I approached the RV, ready to get to work. 1 toolbox, 4 bottles of water, and a car jack later, and the RV was back on its side, and no longer smoking. Andrew and Ryan led most of the repairs, Kaylee acting as brute strength, while I handed them tools.
File.
Ryan asked.
There's a bit of corrosion in here around the ignition points.
Will it run? I asked. Andrew nodded.
Maybe. The engine's in a pretty bad state. We'll need a new radiator hose, 'cause this one won't hold together.
Try this, I said, handing him a roll of duct tape. Andrew took it from me, shrugging before using it to patch the radiator hose together. A few seconds later, he backed up, looking through the windshield and signaling to Quinn. We watched as the RV came to life, the engine churning and rustling every few seconds.
Well, it could be worse,
Andrew said.
Let's go before something else tries to kill us.
Kaylee exclaimed. The 4 of us turned towards the back of the RV, only to watch as one of the police cars began blaring. We stopped, watching as Spencer struggled to get the door open. 1 car went off, then a second, and then a third. One by one, all the police car sirens began to blare across the highway.
Turn that shit off!
Andrew shouted.
We're trying!
Octavia exclaimed. She shattered the window with the metal cap on the hilt of her katana and opened the door, turning the siren off. However, that was only 1 car, and the other 8 were still blaring.
Faster!
Andrew shouted at them.
Give me a moment!
Spencer shouted as he pulled out his revolver, shooting open the windows of the police cars while Octavia turned them off. The blaring sirens echoed across the highway and through the woods around us, and several minutes later, we saw its effects. Maddie, who was talking to Quinn behind the RV, turned around and pointed towards the woods.
Guys!
We all looked towards the trees, watching as a swarm of mutants emerged from the forest. They stumbled through the grass and into the road, thirsty for blood. Our blood. Everyone inside! I shouted, holding up my Colt Python.
We'll hold them off. Grab our stuff and let's go!
Andrew followed with. I fired twice. killing 2 before grabbing my bat from beside the RV. I raised the metal weapon and swung the weapon, bashing one of the mutants in the head. A second grabbed onto my bat, and before it could bite down on it, I slammed the side of the weapon into its face. "Switch to melee! If we use our guns, it'll just attract more!" I shouted to them. Behind me, Quinn and Maddie rushed inside while the others scrambled for their weapons. Andrew pulled out his knife and joined me in keeping the mutants busy. Kaylee and Ryan did the same, the irritated girl unclipping 2 tomahawks off her belt before getting to work, while the former gangster began blasting their heads off with his Remington 870. The swarm began to overtake the highway, and both Octavia and Spencer rushed away from the police cars as mutants began climbing over them. Octavia unsheathed her sword and sliced one in half as the 2 ran. Spencer pushed one aside, but the 2 were forced to stop when 4 surrounded them.
Duck!
Kaylee shouted, turning around to see their predicament. She threw her tomahawk, the weapon flying past Octavia's head and impaling a mutant in the eye. Octavia then took out 2, Spencer finishing the final one, before the 3 retreated into the RV. Andrew, Ryan, and I began to back up, the mutants overwhelming us. I swung my bat, only for one to grab my arm and shove me against the RV. I tried to push it off, but was unable to myself. It wasn't until Axel and Julia, who had yet to retreat into the RV, came to the rescue that I was able to escape. Axel raised his pistol, shooting several mutants coming towards us. Julia stood behind him, watching as he protected her, valiantly. However, he had yet to notice the mutant coming up around the other side of the RV, right in their blind spot. Andrew rushed inside the RV, and I took his hand, the 2 of us stepping inside. Ryan then rushed to join us, only to see a mutant stumble around the corner and grab Julia. Axel turned around to shoot him, but the mutant slashed his gun out of his hands.
Let me go! Axel!
Julia screamed, trying to break free. Ryan rushed forward, tossing his shotgun to the ground and pulling out a hunting knife. With the blade, he stabbed the mutant in the neck, slashing his throat and freeing Julia. The 2 kids rushed into the RV, and he followed, picking up his shotgun on the way. However, he was only able to take a single step into the RV before a mutant underneath the recreational vehicle grabbed his ankle. Ryan fell backwards, slamming against the ground as the mutant moved in to attack. He readied his knife to defend himself, but was instead forced to watch as the mutant tore into his leg, sinking his sharp fangs deep into his flesh.
Oh, fuck! Fuck! Fuck!
Andrew exclaimed, staring down at the bloody scene. Ryan screamed in pain, trying to push the mutant off of him as even more began to surround him. However, the creature's fangs were lodged deep into his skin, making the task nearly impossible. Octavia rushed to the rescue, stabbing the mutant in the head with her sword. Andrew then reached down, taking his hand and pulling him into the RV before slamming the door shut. He then rushed to the front, shoving Spencer out of the way. He hopped into the driver's seat, and the RV flashed to life. We took off down the highway, driving at top speed away from the swarm. However, the damage had been done.
Ryan? Ryan, can you hear me?
Octavia asked, as she stood beside her friend.
Fuck!
Ryan exclaimed, screaming at the top of his lungs.
What are we gonna do?
Space exclaimed. Quinn stepped forward.
Our only option is to separate the wounded limb from the rest of his body and hope for the best.
Separate?
Maddie questioned, turning to look at Quinn. He means amputate.
Amputate? We can't just cut off his leg? Can we?
Kaylee asked. Quinn nodded.
Everyone, please, give me some space. This is going to get messy.
He picked up his bag, setting it beside Ryan. He then knelt down, opening it up and pulling out a small silver case. He opened it up to reveal a plethora of small metal surgical tools. Ryan turned his head to look at them, cringing at the sight of the sharp scalpel in Quinn's hand.
Calm down. This is only going to hurt a lot.
He explained. Ryan grunted, trying to push through the pain.
Just do it!
Quinn pulled out a Sharpie, drawing a line on the top of Ryan's leg a few inches above the wound. He then dug deeper into his bag, pulling out a large metal weapon I recognized as a bone saw. Quinn moved the saw right over the line, and without warning, began to slice into Ryan's leg. The boy was unable to contain his screams any longer, releasing a rapid stream of curses that some of us had never even heard of, as his eyes clenched shut. Quinn tried to calm him down.
Please settle down, Mr. Maroney. It won't be long now.
The amputation wasn't only bad for him, but for the rest of us too. We all covered our eyes, putting in earbuds in some cases, to block out the sound of Quinn's bone saw scraping up and down along the bone hidden beneath Ryan's flesh. The horrendous sound, coupled with the amount of blood staining the carpet, was making the scene unbearable to witness. Quinn let out a sigh as he sliced straight through his leg, the infected limb rolling across the floor. He then turned to Kaylee, snapping his fingers.
Towels!
Kaylee knelt down, handing him a bunch of towels from the bathroom. He began to cover the wound, putting pressure on the bloody amputation the best he could. But still, it wasn't enough.
He is losing too much blood,
Quinn told us as he eyed Ryan's flickering eyes. He was on the verge of passing out, his body seemingly limp.
Stay awake, Ryan. Come on, stay awake.
Kaylee whispered to the disoriented Ryan. What if we cauterized the wound? I suggested. Quinn set down the saw and took a second to think.
It is possible, but very risky as well. The shock could kill him.
So would blood loss, I said. Can you do it?
It's worth a shot,
He said with a shrug. I approached one of the footlockers in the back, opening it up to reveal a portable stove in the bottom. I removed the stove and set it up on the table, powering it on and waiting for it to heat up.
I see. Mom?
Ryan muttered groggily. Kaylee gripped Ryan's hand tightly.
No! Come on, Ryan! Hold on!
The two both looked to me as I set the stove down on the ground, unsure if it was hot enough. Quinn poked the burner with a pencil and it sizzled, answering our question. He then picked up his black military dagger, drenching the weapon in rubbing alcohol, before cleaning it off and holding it over the open flame.
I apologize for this, my good sir.
Quinn said as he removed the towels from Ryan's wound. He handed one to Ryan, forcing him to bite down on it. Kaylee and I cringed as Ryan let out a muffled scream, his eyes wide and the scent of burning flesh filling the air. Quinn pressed his heated dagger against Ryan's bloody stump, doing so in several second bursts. Ryan clutched at his hoodie tightly, digging his nails deep into his skin as his screams echoed throughout the RV. Several minutes later, and his body fell limp. Quinn removed the knife, tossing it aside before moving towards his patient, whose head had tilted to the side. He reached down and felt his pulse, letting out a sigh of relief.
He passed out, but survived the process, it seems.
Quinn told us all.
It seems.
Octavia asked.
There could be underlying effects, or the amputation could not have worked at all. Only time will tell.
Quinn told us all. Kaylee covered up Ryan with a blanket, while Quinn began dabbing the cauterized stump with the towel damp with rubbing alcohol. Kaylee then stood up, giving Octavia a hug.
Oh God.
Spencer muttered, covering his noise.
I think I'm gonna...
The boy then rushed into the bathroom, slamming the door shut, before emptying his stomach contents into the toilet. Andrew groaned, shaking his head.
Yep, he's back.
Now that we're not under arrest, what's our route south? I asked Andrew. He pointed to the map taped on the dashboard, showing a map south through Tennessee, Georgia, and then finally Florida.
We've got a 13-hour drive ahead of us. Someone better swap with me because I'm not driving the whole way.
Andrew said to us.
It's already 2 in the afternoon. By the time we get there, it'll be after midnight. I don't think the marina's open that late.
Space commented.
Open? Who the hell cares? We can just hop the fence and steal it.
Andrew said. She shook her head.
Security is heavy around the marina because of how many expensive boats are held there. And we're already wanted by the police. It's best if we stop for the night. As soon as it opens up in the morning, we leave.
Andrew shook his head back.
Not happening. Every time we stop, something happens, and we get delayed. Tonight is our last night, and tomorrow night, this place turns into ground zero, which I am not sticking around for.
Actually, we may need to make a stop along the way. I am currently in need of more medical supplies as our former surplus of bandages and rubbing alcohol seems to have depleted itself.
Quinn explained. I looked at him, and he winked at me when Andrew wasn't looking.
Fine.
He groaned.
Where are we stopping then?
Another farm?
Maddie suggested. I took a few seconds to think, before shaking my head. No, I got a better idea. Layton Suites Hotel.
Where?
Space asked. I approached the map, marking a spot down south of Jacksonville. One of my online friends, Addison, lives in a hotel in Jacksonville. I haven't spoken with her since we've left, but she's probably still there if the city isn't quarantined yet. I explained to them.
And how do you know she won't out us to the cops?
Andrew asked, a bit suspicious. I've known her for years. She'd never do that. She's safe. Don't worry, I told him. Andrew rolled his eyes before looking back at the road, muttering beneath his breath.
Next stop, Jacksonville. I guess.
Hours later, we had arrived in the state of the sun, Florida. The sun was beginning to set, our 6-hour journey coming to an end. I stared out the window, admiring the setting sun on the horizon, as space held my hand tightly. Kaylee, who was lying underneath a blanket beside Octavia, stood up and yawned, stretching her legs. Spencer's eyes fluttered open as he awoke from his nap on the floor, looking forward to see Kaylee's behind right in front of him. Spencer muttered beneath his breath.
Well, damn.
Kaylee stepped away, shooting a glare.
Glad to see you're awake, Perv. We're almost there.
Correct. We have arrived.
Quinn told us. The RV pulled up to a large hotel, and we all looked out the window to admire it. Music blared at the pool area beside the hotel, and the windows glistened. The giant sign on the front flashing Layton Suites Hotel every few seconds. We drove the RV into the parking lot. Andrew parked in one of the corners, beneath a broken street light, before turning off the RV.
So, what are we doing about him?
Space asked as she looked down at Ryan. Deku was lying on his chest, fast asleep.
Leave him here for now. I don't think the public would react kindly to a bunch of teenagers carrying a bloody amputee into a high-end hotel in the middle of the night.
Andrew told her. One by one, we exited the RV, each carrying our bags. Due to the public environment, we kept our weapons out of sight. I carried my metal bat, but cleaned it off before taking it with us. I also had my revolver, but it was hidden in the small pocket in my bag. Quinn stopped in the doorway of the RV.
I shall stay behind for now to ensure our injured comrade does not cease breathing. The rest of you continue onwards, locate Anakin's friend, and find us a place to seek sanctuary tonight.
Just make sure Deku doesn't get out.
Spencer told him.
Don't worry, by the time you return, I'll have him baked into an excellent and exquisite frittata.
Quinn joked to Spencer. Andrew nodded to Quinn, and Spencer shot him a glare, before we walked across the parking lot, entering the high-end hotel. We were greeted by a bright black, white, and gold-colored lobby, an arcade to the right, and a water park to the left. Space's eyes sparkled as she grinned, the reflection of an arcade machine visible in her eyes.
So, where do we start?
Octavia asked, curiously.
I suggest we split up. But whatever you guys do, don't eat any lotus flowers.
Kaylee told us all.
Let me guess. Mythology geek?
Space asked her. Kaylee smiled.
Yep.
I reached into my jacket to grab my phone so I could message her, but remembered I had tossed it into a field only days before. I frowned, crossing my arms as I tried to remember her room number. The 12th floor, 6th room, I think. I told them as we proceeded towards the stairs. One by one, we all filed into the cramped stairwell, heading upstairs till we finally reached the 6th floor. Spencer was on his knees by the time we reached there.
Jeez, babe, you okay?
Maddie asked Spencer.
Yeah. Sorry. This was the most exercise I've gotten since I had to run the mile in PE.
He nodded through breaths. I walked down the hall, Andrew behind me, until I found the correct room. I hesitated to knock on the door in case it was the wrong one, but Andrew did it before I could. The door opened several seconds later, a red-haired girl appearing on the other end. She was holding her phone, but gasped after looking up from the device to see me. The girl immediately wrapped her arms around me, and I realized she was beginning to tear up. "Addison, what's wrong?" Through tears, she smiled.
I thought you were dead. Your city.
No, we're fine. We made it out. Addison continued the hug, and I turned my head to see Space giving me a look that screamed jealousy. Muffin Sacks, this is Addison Lane.